The last Mac Mini was kind of a disaster. After offering quad-core CPUs on the 2012 and 2011 models, Apple chose to release the 2014 Mini with fairly slow dual-core processors as its only option. Furthermore, aside from the hard drive, the 2014 model was basically non-upgradable. Apple had been trending this way for a while with its iMacs and MacBooks, but considering the measly base specs of the 2014 Mac Mini, it really hamstrung the device.
We've not been able to run full tests comparing the previous generation with the latest generation of Mac Minis. We wouldn't be surprised to see this year's Mac Minis to be slower than those from 2012.
The 2014 Mini was mostly useful as a media box, and even that was pretty much made obsolete by the Apple TV. Considering these poor specs, it was frankly shocking that until last month, Apple was still selling the 2014 Mac Mini for $500.
The base model is severely underpowered, and I genuinely do not recommend that you buy any of these from the Apple website.
In the meantime, micro PCs and Intel's NUC compact computers have been offering vastly more power at competing prices. Now, 4 years later, the Mac Mini has finally been refreshed with improved components. The Mini is a viable choice for anyone wanting a compact desktop or streaming machine. This time around, Apple is positioning the Mini as a potential pro-grade computer. Previous Mac Minis topped out at around $1,000, but fully upgraded, you can spend over $4,000 on a 2018 Mac Mini, if that's what you want. I was impressed with some aspects of the new Mini, and it corrects a lot of the flaws of the 2014 machine, but it has a few quirks that will probably keep it from being a true solution for most people. Compared to its predecessor, the 2018 Mac Mini is a huge improvement. In a surprising move, the Mini offers a remarkable selection of ports. There's Ethernet, a headphone jack, and then 4 USB-C ports supporting Thunderbolt 3. It also sports a full-size HDMI and 2 USB 3 Type-A ports. Personally, this is exactly the port selection I would love to see on a MacBook Pro, but that seems unlikely to ever happen. Multiple monitors are pretty much a requirement for me for video editing, and unfortunately shared controllers mean those Thunderbolt ports can only support 2 displays, but add in the HDMI and you can actually run 3 4K monitors from the Mini. The only thing you lose entirely from previous models is the analog microphone input, but considering how prevalent USB audio is these days, that's not much of a loss. I tested the base $799 model, which comes with a quad-core 3.6 GHz i3 8100B chip with UHD 630 graphics, 8 GB of RAM, and a 128 GB SSD. The RAM is upgradable this time around, though Apple terms it Service Center upgradable. It'll take a set of Torx drivers and some Moxie, but it can be done. I once replaced a Nexus 6P battery with a razor blade and a hairdryer, so it looks pretty doable to me. For daily computing tasks, the base model i3 is more than capable. Booting up, browsing the web, word processing, all were smooth and without hitches. But that's not what we're really interested in, right? The real question is, how does this computer perform in an intense workload? And there the answer was a little trickier. In synthetic tests like Geekbench and Cinebench, the Mac Mini's i3 CPU generally performed pretty well, approaching the power of an i7 MacBook Pro and even beating it in single-core performance. In graphics, it struggled though, coming in at half of the MacBook's performance in Cinebench, and in Geekbench scoring a mere 12% of the compute power of an iMac Pro. For a real-world test, I edited a video on the Mini using Premiere Pro. It actually worked better than I expected, but again, some limitations became apparent. For basic cutting and playback, the Mini performed great, even handling 4K footage without too much difficulty. The issue is that Premiere leans on GPU performance for playback once you start modifying the footage with text and color correction and effects. Even adding a simple color correction filter to the footage started to make playback choppy, though dropping the preview resolution helped. The real problems emerged when I set up a stress test, adding color correction, a blur, and a title to a clip. During a 10-second playback, Premiere was only able to display 10% of the frames, turning the video into a slideshow. Furthermore, in these more intense scenarios, I also had significant audio dropouts, which really makes editing impossible. Layering these effects was a difficult test, but it's also fairly common in my video workflow, and these results made getting real work done much slower than I would have liked. In exporting footage, the Mini performed a bit better. Exporting and rendering is another generally CPU-intensive task, and the Mini performed just slightly slower than my MacBook Pro, and again about half as fast as the iMac Pro. The Mini's CPU is more capable than I'd expected, but a picture is emerging of a system really held back by graphics performance. To that end, I tried one more test, Unigen's Valley benchmark. This is an intensive graphic test that mimics a high-fidelity game, and the Mini did not perform well. Even on the lowest settings, it only managed 20 frames per second, and on extreme, that dropped to a pitiful 4. Yes, that is 4 frames per second. And this is not likely a machine you'll be gaming on. If you're willing to spend more, there are options that'll help out a few of the problems here, but it adds up fast to the point where you might be better off buying a different machine from the outset. The biggest issue is there's no option to improve the graphics. You could buy an external GPU, but that's likely at least another $500. It's a strange decision to limit all models of the Mini to Intel's Subpar built-in graphics, especially considering that Intel's new Kaby Lake G chips seem like the perfect fit for the Mac Mini. Kaby Lake G is the unnatural union of Intel's 8th gen processors and an AMD Vega GPU. AMD graphics can already be found in higher-end iMac and MacBook Pros, so it would seem like a natural fit to offer that for the Mini. So, who is the system for? Well, if you don't care about operating system, there are compelling Mini PC alternatives. If you just want a basic computer, Lenovo's ThinkCentre can get you a cheaper machine with a worse processor but more built-in storage, or Intel's Hades Canyon NUCs can give you solid graphics performance, though those aren't strictly plug and play. And if you really want a professional mini system, HP's Z2 Mini G4 packs the same 6-core processor, 16 gigs of RAM, and 512 gig SSD as a $1,699 Mini, but it also includes a pro-grade NVIDIA Quadro GPU and costs $100 less. However, none of these systems are from Apple, and if macOS is what you're looking for, then the $799 base Mini is the cheapest way to get a Mac system today. Beyond the base configuration, the $300 processor upgrade is not a bad way to get a fast 6-core processor that should be relatively future-proof and be able to handle any standard task you throw at it without stuttering. This could be a good single-task machine for a programmer, or a spreadsheet wizard, or a music producer. If you don't care about graphics performance, and especially if you already have a monitor, mouse, and keyboard, the Mini comes with none of those, it's a good system for daily work. For the rest of us, the Mini feels a little like a product searching for a niche. This might end up being the Mac for your grandparents, a small, reliable desktop that should feel speedy and take care of basic work. But if you don't really care about performance at all, then the new MacBook Air might be a better choice, as you don't need to buy accessories for it. And if you do care about performance, the Mac Mini might let you down. But for people who are looking for an inexpensive macOS desktop and who already have a good monitor and want a ton of useful ports, and don't care about GPU performance, the Mac Mini might be just right.